Your child was born a philosopher, and you trained it out of them. Not on purpose, not with cruelty, with rewards, with approval, with a look on your face that said good every time they did what you expected, and a different look, smaller, colder, every time they didn't. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what Nietzsche saw in that process, and you'll understand what it cost the child you raised, or the child you used to be. Nietzsche said people don't think, they repeat. They don't choose their values. They inherit them the way they inherit a surname, without ever being asked if they wanted it. And here's the part that should bother you. Parents who never question their own inherited values cannot raise children who do. You can't hand someone a compass you never learned to read yourself. Here's how it actually happens. Not through punishment, through timing. A 4-year-old asks why for the 5th time in a row about something you've already answered. Most parents don't answer the 6th time. They say, because I said so. And the child learns something that has nothing to do with the original question. They learn that curiosity has a ceiling, and hitting it gets you a version of disapproval. A 10-year-old comes home with a B when they're capable of an A. The reaction in that house teaches the child what's actually being measured. Not effort, not thought, but output that matches an expectation someone else set. That's the conditioning, not cruelty. Just 1,000 small moments where obedience got the warm reaction and independent thought got the cold one. Nietzsche called this the herd mentality, not an insult, a mechanism. Most people spend their entire lives running scripts they never wrote. The script says, work hard, don't make waves, respect authority, want what your parents wanted for you. Nobody handed you that script in one document. You absorbed it one warm look and one cold look at a time, starting before you could talk. Now, here's what I actually think about this. I don't think most parents are villains in this story. Most of them were doing exactly what was done to them and calling it love, because it was the only version of love they were shown. That's what makes this so hard to see. Cruelty is easy to spot. A closed loop of good intentions is nearly invisible from inside it. But there's a second lesson, and it's the one that hides inside good parenting specifically. Not neglectful parenting, the attentive kind. Protecting a child from every failure doesn't produce a confident adult. It produces an adult who has never once discovered they can survive being wrong. You stepped in before the fall. You fixed the group project. You called the coach about playing time. Every single time you did that, you weren't just solving a problem. You were quietly telling your child, you are not equipped to handle this without me. Think about a specific version of this most fathers in this audience will recognize. A boy doesn't make the starting lineup. He's disappointed, maybe for the first time about something that matters to him. And the instinct, the loving instinct, is to fix it. Call the coach. Explain the injustice. Get the outcome corrected. But here's what the child actually needed, and rarely gets. The experience of being disappointed, surviving it without rescue, and discovering on his own that the disappointment didn't end him. That discovery is the entire foundation of resilience. Skip it enough times, and you raise an adult who has no internal evidence that he can handle things going wrong. Because every time they did, someone bigger stepped in before he found out. That message compounds. By adulthood, it doesn't look like weakness. It looks like a grown man who can't make a decision without checking it against what everyone else will think first. Here's the question that actually matters, and I want you to sit with it for a second instead of skipping past it. When's the last time you did something specifically because your parents, or your church, or your neighborhood, or your father's opinion of what a real man does, expected it of you, and you never once asked whether you actually wanted it? If an answer came fast, that's not a small thing. That's the script Nietzsche was talking about, still running, decades later, in you. There's a specific trap inside parenting that looks like the opposite of obedience training, and it's just as dangerous, raising a reflection instead of a person. This is the parent who doesn't demand obedience to rules. They demand obedience to an image. The kid who plays the sport the father played, who goes into the family business, who marries the kind of person that makes sense to everyone at the table. Nobody forced any of it. The child just learned, early, that love arrived faster and warmer when they matched the picture already hanging in their parents' heads. That's not raising an individual. That's raising a mirror and calling it a son. Personally, I find this version harder to forgive than plain obedience training because it's dressed up as pride. I'm so proud of you. can be one of the most controlling sentences in the English language, depending entirely on what it's actually rewarding. So what was Nietzsche's alternative? People hear Übermensch and picture domination, someone who steps over everyone else to get what they want. That's a complete misread, and it's worth correcting directly. The Übermensch isn't someone who conquers other people. It's someone who conquers inherited values. Someone who looks at the script they were handed and asks, with real rigor, which parts are actually theirs, and has the nerve to keep only those. Raising that kind of person doesn't mean permissiveness. It doesn't mean no structure, no expectations, no discipline. It means something much harder to execute than either extreme, rewarding the question as much as the compliance. Letting a kid fail at something recoverable and staying quiet while they figure out how to survive it. Being proud out loud of a choice you would not have made yourself, when it's clearly theirs and not a rebellion for its own sake. Here's my honest opinion on why this is so rare. It requires the parent to have done the work first. You cannot reward independent thought in a child if independent thought terrifies you in yourself. Most people never examined their own inherited values closely enough to know which ones were actually theirs and which ones were just handed to them at a dinner table 40 years ago. Asking them to raise a child who does that is asking them to parent from ground they've never stood on themselves. And this doesn't stay inside one family. A generation raised on obedience produces a society that runs on the same mechanism at scale. People who follow, rarely because they've reasoned their way there, but because following was rewarded early and often, and independent thought was quietly, politely, lovingly discouraged, one warm look and one cold look at a time. That's not a dramatic collapse. It's just a lot of adults doing what's expected, wondering privately why none of it feels like it's actually theirs. Careers chosen because they were sensible. Marriages built on what looked right from the outside. Entire lives constructed out of approval, with almost nothing built out of actual conviction. So here's the honest answer to what you'll do with this. You can't undo how you were raised. Nietzsche wasn't offering a way to rewrite your childhood. But you can stop running the script today, in how you parent and in how you live. Start noticing the moments you reward compliance out of habit, in yourself and in your kids. Start asking your own inherited values the same 6 whys you never let your kid finish asking. And if the answer to any of them is because that's just what we do, that's not an answer. That's the herd, talking through you, using your own voice. The child who kept asking why was never the problem. Silencing them was. Tell me where I'm wrong. Comment section is open, and I read every one of them. Subscribe if this actually made you think. Philosophy every week. No fluff, no motivation posters.